did the demo last Wednesday in the short window of time that I had. I know there's a request for a specific example involving top-down planning or target-driven planning. And unfortunately, the demo application that I used for our meeting last week didn't contain any pre-built, pre-configured, or specific examples that address that request or requirement. So I was able to leverage one of our other demo applications from our existing demo library that hopefully addresses this. So this specific demo application is kind of constructed around an organization that is planning for a number of associated costs and expenses with IT projects, right? So just keep in mind, again, art of the possible, the ability to kind of configure exactly what meets or fits your organizational needs. This example isn't intended to be exactly what you as an organization will experience or build out in your application. Just wanted to give you kind of a idea of what's possible when it comes to the top-down planning example. So again, we've got, and I kind of changed some of the naming conventions or aliases for some of the business units or organizational units, so it kind of makes sense for your organization, right? So specifically on this composite data entry web form, we've got, assuming the current year is FY22, we've got prior year actuals up here on the top, and then we've got our current year plan, right? So, across the column set, I've got casino, golf, restaurant, human resources. Then again, because this is focused on an IT-driven initiative, I've got a number of accounts here in the row set that are specific to IT costing or IT projects, right? So HCM, ERP, social media, maybe business services. If I expand that subtotal, you can see we've got big data, employee portal, CE reporting. Just wanted to give you an example of how this can be configured, right? It doesn't have to look exactly like this, but for this example, we're focused on any of the expenses associated with these IT projects, right? So on this specific form, just wanted to reduce that subtotal right there and collapse that row set. So in this specific example, the percentages that are of the relationship between these individual account subtotals, for example, commercial applications and all the children that sit underneath this parent node, those percentages, as they are calculated as part of the grand total for all services and applications, are applied to the same account row set down here on the bottom for FY22 plan and the expenses that you see here, right? So if you take 140,000 divided by 690,000, that percentage is the same applied to 147,000 divided by 724.5, right? So that's kind of the calculation that we're using here. And again, doesn't necessarily need to be like this. You can certainly make it more complex, whatever fits your organizational requirements when it comes to these types of examples for planning or forecasting or budgeting, right? So we've got all of the plan data that's being driven by these percentage relationships or ratios up here on the top from the prior year actuals, right? So how do we go about actually applying total targets, right? And when I say total targets, I'm referring to these subtotals here at the bottom for casino, for golf, for restaurant, for HR, et cetera, right? So if we look here for FY22 plan, we can see that the grand total for all of our accounts, our associated cost accounts for these specific business units is 3.592 million, right? So I'm going to navigate across to the left here on my sort of my horizontal navigation flow. I'm going to click on this overall IT spends global, and you're going to see that same 3.592 number here at the bottom, right? So here's where I can actually come in and start changing these amounts. And again, for this specific example, we're looking at it from a sort of a global perspective, right? They're using all of the total, like again, the top account, or sorry, the top expense number for casino, for golf, for restaurant, for HR, for this particular entity, right? USIT, and that again, doesn't really apply to you, but you can configure it however you want. We have Europe and we have Asia Pacific, right? And again, that sums up to this grand total. And similarly with the subtotals here for casino, golf, restaurant, HR, 724,000. If I click back here, navigate back here, 724,000, right? So if I come back here, if you notice sorry, I went too fast. If you notice on the previous screen, all of these numbers are grayed out, right? They're locked out. That means I can't change the number, right? The idea is that, any end user, we don't want to, hard code or hard enter any of the numbers on this specific screen, because they're going to be driven by the calculation that's running behind the scenes once I change the data here on my overall IT spends global web form, right? So for example, restaurant, the total for this particular unit for FY22 plan, the grand total for the year, let's say it's 410,000. I want to come in here and I want to change it to 450,000, right? I'm going to click save. It'll take a second or two. I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to come here and I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose this allocate targets business rule. Now, business rules are specific sort of syntax or formulas that will be developed by your SI based on any sort of requirements that you have that pertains to planning, budgeting, forecasting. Very common. You'll absolutely have these as part of your implementation plan, right? So I'm going to click on this. It's going to allocate this grand total 450,000. If I navigate back over here to the buy services and applications, you can see that this number changed, right? It was lower by 30,000, 618, right? Now it's also 618. And it's spread that amount from the grand total for USIT based on the relationships that were identified in that business rule to these specific accounts by the percentages derived up here in actuals, right? So again, I could come back over here. Let's take the golf example, 1.348 million. I'm gonna change this to 950,000. Oh, 1 0 too many. That's not what I wanted. I'm gonna change this to 125. And let's just change this to an even 350. I'm gonna hit save. So that's gonna go from 1.348 to 1.425. I'm gonna right click, I'm gonna allocate the targets. And you can see that these numbers changed and the grand total is now 1.425. So again, in summary, just a very simple, generic example that hopefully gives you guys an idea of what is possible when it comes to the capabilities with top-down planning. Thank you.